Nobody's coming to save you. Why focusing on you is the path to victory. Preface. I was 32 years old, sitting in my car outside a bankruptcy attorney's office, when I realized the most liberating truth of my life: nobody was coming to save me. My business had failed. My savings were gone. My marriage was crumbling. I had spent the previous 6 months waiting for something to change, for someone to rescue me, for circumstances to magically improve. I had been waiting for investors to call back, for my wife to understand my vision, for the economy to turn around, for luck to finally swing my way. Nothing came. No one arrived. The rescue never happened. That moment of brutal clarity, sitting in that parking lot, became the turning point that changed everything. Not because someone finally showed up to help, but because I stopped waiting for them to. I realized that the cavalry wasn't coming, the lucky break wasn't around the corner, and the universe wasn't conspiring to hand me success on a silver platter. I was alone with my choices, my effort, and my willingness to do whatever it took to rebuild my life from the ground up. And that realization, as terrifying as it was, became the most powerful force in my transformation. Over the next 5 years, I built 3 successful companies, restored my marriage, achieved financial freedom, and created a life that exceeded anything I had imagined during those dark days. But none of it happened because I got lucky, found the right mentor, or stumbled into opportunity. It happened because I accepted complete responsibility for my life and stopped waiting for external salvation. This book is the result of 15 years studying what separates people who win from people who wait. I've interviewed hundreds of successful entrepreneurs, analyzed the patterns of high achievers across industries, and worked directly with thousands of individuals who transformed their lives by embracing one fundamental principle: you are your own rescue. The world is divided into 2 types of people. The first type waits for circumstances to improve, for opportunities to appear, for someone to recognize their potential and hand them success. They live in a perpetual state of hoping, wishing, and blaming external factors for their lack of progress. The second type understands that nobody is coming to save them, that opportunity is created, not discovered, and that the only person who can change their life is staring back at them from the mirror every morning. This book is for people ready to join the second group. It's for anyone tired of waiting, tired of making excuses, and ready to take full ownership of their results. It's for people who understand that self-reliance isn't selfishness, that focusing on yourself isn't arrogance, and that putting your own development first is the only path to having something valuable to offer the world. In the chapters ahead, you're going to learn the principles that separate winners from waiters. You'll discover why most people never achieve their potential, how to build unshakable self-reliance, and the specific strategies that transform ordinary individuals into unstoppable forces. This isn't a book about positive thinking or manifesting your dreams. This is a book about action, discipline, responsibility, and the raw truth that your life will only change when you decide to change it. Nobody is coming to save you. And once you truly accept this truth, your real life can finally begin. Chapter 1. The Rescue That Never Comes. James Morrison was 45 years old when his company announced layoffs. He had worked there for 17 years, climbing steadily from entry-level sales to regional manager. He had a good salary, decent benefits, and the comfortable security that comes from institutional employment. Then, in a single afternoon, it all disappeared. James told himself it was temporary. The job market would improve. His network would come through. His skills were valuable. Someone would hire him soon. He sent out resumes, attended networking events, and waited for the phone to ring with the offer that would restore his comfortable life. 6 months later, James was still waiting. His savings were depleted. His confidence was shattered. His wife had taken a part-time job to cover expenses, and James was still convinced that his rescue was just around the corner, that any day now, someone would recognize his value and solve his problems. When I met James 2 years after his layoff, he was working a job he hated for half his previous salary, bitter about the unfairness of the economy, resentful toward companies that didn't hire him, and angry at a world that had failed to deliver the rescue he deserved. James's story isn't unique. I've seen this pattern repeated thousands of times across every industry and demographic. Talented people waiting for someone else to solve their problems. Capable individuals paralyzed by the belief that external circumstances must change before they can move forward. Smart people who have outsourced responsibility for their lives to factors beyond their control. The rescue mentality is one of the most destructive patterns in modern society. It's the belief that someone or something outside yourself will eventually arrive to fix your problems, validate your worth, or hand you the success you desire. It's waiting for the right boss to recognize your talent, the right partner to complete you, the right opportunity to present itself, or the right moment when everything finally aligns. This mentality is reinforced everywhere in our culture. Movies end with heroes being saved at the last moment. Social media celebrates overnight success stories while hiding the years of grinding work that preceded them. Self-help gurus promise quick fixes and easy transformations. We're bombarded with messages that suggest success happens to people, not because of people. But here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. The rescue you're waiting for isn't coming. The perfect opportunity won't knock on your door. The ideal circumstances won't magically appear. The person who will transform your life and solve all your problems doesn't exist. This isn't pessimism or cynicism. It's the most empowering truth you'll ever encounter. Because once you stop waiting for rescue, you can start creating your own salvation. I learned this principle the hard way during my own business failure. I had spent months waiting for investors to fund my expansion, for partners to step up, for market conditions to improve. I had crafted elaborate narratives about why my business struggled that placed responsibility everywhere except where it belonged, on my own decisions, actions, and leadership. The moment I stopped waiting and started taking complete ownership was the moment everything changed. Instead of waiting for investors, I figured out how to bootstrap growth with existing resources. Instead of hoping partners would become more committed, I either replaced them or restructured the business to succeed without them. Instead of blaming market conditions, I adapted my offering to serve the market that actually existed rather than the one I wished existed. Within 18 months, I had built a more successful business than the one that had failed. But this time it was built on a foundation of self-reliance rather than external dependence. The rescue mentality creates three devastating consequences that keep people trapped in mediocrity. First, it paralyzes action. When you're waiting for external salvation, you postpone taking decisive action on your own behalf. You hesitate to start the business because you're waiting for the right partner. You avoid difficult conversations because you're hoping circumstances will improve on their own. You delay pursuing your goals because you're waiting for permission, validation, or ideal conditions. Second, it creates victim consciousness. When you believe that your success depends on factors outside your control, you inevitably begin viewing yourself as a victim of circumstances. Every setback becomes evidence of unfairness. Every challenge becomes proof that the world is against you. Every person who doesn't help becomes someone who has wronged you. This victim identity becomes self-perpetuating, creating a lens through which you interpret all experiences as happening to you rather than being shaped by you. Third, it prevents the development of genuine capability and resilience. When you're waiting for rescue, you never develop the muscles required to save yourself. You don't build problem-solving skills because you're waiting for someone else to solve your problems. You don't develop resilience because you avoid situations that require it. You don't cultivate self-trust because you're constantly looking outside yourself for answers and direction. Breaking free from the rescue mentality requires confronting several uncomfortable truths. The first is that you are not special in the eyes of the universe. The world doesn't owe you success, happiness, or fair treatment. Your potential, no matter how great, means nothing without execution. Your dreams, no matter how noble, don't obligate anyone else to help you achieve them. The second truth is that most people are too focused on their own lives to rescue you. Your friends and family care about you, but they have their own challenges, goals, and limitations. Your colleagues and connections are managing their own careers and priorities. The successful people you admire are busy building their own empires, not scouting for people to save. The third truth is that even if rescue did arrive, it would ultimately fail you. Borrowed success is temporary. Opportunities you didn't earn are opportunities you can't sustain. Skills you didn't develop through your own effort are skills you don't truly possess. The only lasting success is the success you create through your own capability, effort, and persistence. When James finally accepted these truths, his entire trajectory changed. Instead of sending out generic resumes and waiting for responses, he identified exactly what value he could provide to specific companies and created customized proposals. Instead of waiting for networking to produce opportunities, he started a consulting practice serving his former industry. Instead of hoping someone would recognize his worth, he began demonstrating it through measurable results. Within a year, James was earning more than his previous corporate salary, working on his own terms, and building a business that he controlled rather than depending on someone else's organization for security. The path from waiting to winning begins with a single declaration. I am responsible for my life, my results, and my future. Nobody is coming to save me, and I don't need them to. I have everything required to create the life I want, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it happen. This declaration isn't made once and forgotten. It's a daily recommitment, especially during difficult times when the temptation to wait for external rescue becomes strongest. It's a fundamental shift in identity from someone who hopes things will change to someone who makes things change. In our next chapter, we're going to explore why focusing on yourself first isn't selfish, it's strategic, and how building your own strength is the prerequisite for everything else you want to achieve. Chapter 2. The Strategic Power of Self-Focus. Maria Santos grew up in a culture that celebrated selflessness. She was taught that good people put others first, that focusing on yourself was vanity, and that your worth was measured by how much you sacrificed for others. Maria embodied these values completely. She worked full-time while putting her husband through graduate school, took care of her aging parents, volunteered at her children's schools, and was always the first person friends called when they needed help. By age 40, Maria was exhausted, resentful, and living a life that bore no resemblance to her own dreams and aspirations. She had spent 2 decades serving everyone else's agenda, while her own remained perpetually postponed. The most painful realization was that despite all her sacrifice, she wasn't actually helping anyone effectively because she had nothing left to give. Maria's story illustrates one of the most damaging myths in personal development, that focusing on yourself is selfish and that prioritizing others is noble. This false dichotomy has trapped millions of capable people in lives of quiet desperation, convinced that their own development must wait until everyone else's needs are met. The truth is exactly the opposite. Focusing on yourself first isn't selfish, it's strategic. It's the only way to develop the strength, resources, and capacity required to genuinely contribute to others. You cannot give what you don't have. You cannot help others climb mountains you haven't climbed yourself. You cannot share wisdom you haven't earned or provide opportunities you haven't created. Think about the safety instructions on an airplane. In an emergency, you're told to put on your own oxygen mask before helping others, even your own children. This isn't because your life is more valuable than theirs. It's because if you lose consciousness trying to help them first, everyone dies. But if you secure your own oxygen first, you can then effectively help everyone around you. This same principle applies to every area of life. When you focus on building yourself first, developing your skills, strengthening your mindset, creating your resources, and establishing your foundation, you dramatically increase your capacity to contribute to others. When you neglect yourself to serve others, you eventually become a burden rather than an asset. I discovered this principle during the darkest period of my life. After my business failure, I felt tremendous guilt about focusing on my own recovery when my family needed support. My instinct was to immediately find any job that would provide income, even if it meant abandoning my entrepreneurial goals and settling for something that didn't utilize my capabilities. My wife, surprisingly, pushed back. She told me that she didn't marry someone who settled, and that watching me give up on my potential to pursue short-term security would be more painful than enduring temporary financial difficulty. She understood something I was just beginning to grasp. The best thing I could do for my family was become the strongest, most capable version of myself, even if that process required short-term sacrifice. That permission to focus on my own development changed everything. Instead of taking the first job offer that came along, I spent 6 months intensively developing new skills, building a portfolio of work, and creating systems that would support long-term success. That focused period of self-investment paid dividends for years, creating opportunities and income that would have been impossible if I had settled for immediate rescue through any available employment. Strategic self-focus requires understanding 3 fundamental principles. The first is that time and energy are finite resources. Every hour you spend on someone else's agenda is an hour you don't spend building your own capabilities. Every burst of energy you expend solving other people's problems is energy unavailable for creating your own solutions. This isn't about being miserly with your time or refusing to help others. It's about recognizing that how you allocate your most precious resources determines the trajectory of your entire life. Most people leak massive amounts of time and energy into activities that neither develop them nor genuinely serve others. They spend hours scrolling social media, watching content that doesn't educate or inspire them, engaging in gossip and drama, attending obligations that don't matter, and maintaining relationships that drain rather than energize them. Then they wonder why they don't have time to work on their goals or develop their potential. The second principle is that capability compounds over time. Every skill you develop, every piece of knowledge you acquire, every system you build, and every discipline you master becomes a foundation for future growth. The person who spends 5 years intensively focused on becoming excellent in their field has exponentially more opportunities than the person who spent those same 5 years distracted by immediate concerns and other people's priorities. This compounding effect is why focusing on yourself first creates increasing returns over time. The first year of intensive self-development might not produce dramatic external results, but it creates the foundation for second-year growth. The second year builds on the first, creating capabilities that enable third-year acceleration. By year 5, the person who focused relentlessly on their own development is operating at a completely different level than their peers who remain distracted. The third principle is that people respect strength, not sacrifice. We've been taught that others will appreciate our selfless service and reward our willingness to put them first. In reality, people respect those who respect themselves enough to prioritize their own development. They're attracted to strength, capability, and the confidence that comes from having built something substantial through focused effort. Maria learned this principle when she finally began saying no to constant requests for her time and energy. She expected anger, resentment, and accusations of selfishness. Instead, something unexpected happened. People began respecting her more. The relationships that mattered actually strengthened when she set boundaries, and the relationships that fell away revealed themselves as one-sided dynamics that had never served her in the first place. Strategic self-focus doesn't mean becoming a hermit or abandoning all responsibilities. It means being ruthlessly intentional about how you spend your time and energy, ensuring that your primary investment is always in building your own capacity, capability, and foundation. This requires creating what I call development zones, protected periods of time dedicated exclusively to your own growth. These might be early mornings before others wake, evenings after obligations are met, or full days blocked on your calendar that are non-negotiable regardless of what requests come in. During these development zones, you are unavailable for other people's emergencies, invitations, or needs. You are investing in the only asset that will determine your long-term success, yourself. For me, development zones are 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. every morning and Sunday afternoons. During these periods, I don't answer calls, check email, or respond to requests. I use this time for reading, skill development, strategic planning, and intensive work on my highest priority projects. These protected periods have been more responsible for my success than any other single factor, because they ensure consistent progress on my own development regardless of external demands. Strategic self-focus also means being selective about relationships and opportunities. Not every relationship deserves your investment. Not every opportunity deserves your attention. Many of the people and invitations that enter your life are distractions disguised as obligations, preventing you from the focused work that would actually move your life forward. I've learned to evaluate every relationship and opportunity through a simple filter. Does this make me stronger or weaker? Does engaging with this person or pursuing this opportunity develop my capabilities, advance my goals, and align with my priorities? Or does it drain my energy, distract my focus, and pull me away from what matters most? This evaluation isn't cold or calculating. It's strategic and necessary. The most successful people I know are extremely protective of their time and attention, because they understand that these resources determine everything else. They choose relationships that energize rather than drain them. They pursue opportunities that compound their capabilities rather than fragmenting their focus. When Maria fully embraced strategic self-focus, her life transformed completely. She reduced her volunteer commitments to one organization, where she could make meaningful impact. She set clear boundaries with family members about what she could and couldn't provide. She declined social invitations that felt like obligations rather than genuine connection, and she redirected all that reclaimed time and energy into developing skills that had been dormant for decades. Within 3 years, Maria had completed a professional certification, started a consulting practice, tripled her income, and was actually contributing more value to the people she cared about than when she had been constantly sacrificing herself. She had proven that focusing on herself first wasn't selfish. It was the prerequisite for everything else. The guilt you might feel about prioritizing your own development is often misplaced obligation disguised as virtue. You don't owe others the sacrifice of your potential. You don't honor anyone by remaining weak, broke, or unfulfilled while trying to serve them. The greatest gift you can give the people you care about is becoming someone strong enough, capable enough, and successful enough to actually help them when it matters. In our next chapter, we're going to explore how to build the mental fortress required to maintain focus when everyone around you questions your choices and doubts your vision. Chapter 3. Building your mental fortress. Derek Thompson spent 6 months building his business in secret before telling anyone about it. He worked his corporate job during the day and poured every evening and weekend into his venture, telling colleagues he was busy and friends he was tired. He kept his vision private, not because he was ashamed, but because he understood something crucial. Most people will kill your dreams before they're strong enough to defend themselves. When Derek finally shared what he had been building, the reactions were predictable. His parents worried about his financial security. His friends questioned why he would risk a stable career. His colleagues suggested he was being irresponsible. Even his girlfriend expressed doubts about whether he could actually succeed in such a competitive market. Every one of these people meant well. They cared about Derek and wanted to protect him from potential failure. But their concerns, however well-intentioned, were based on their own fears, limitations, and conditioning, not on Derek's actual capabilities or vision. This is the fundamental challenge every person faces when pursuing something significant. The world will test your conviction constantly. Family will express concern. Friends will offer warnings disguised as advice. Society will remind you of all the reasons your goals are unrealistic, your timeline is impossible, and your chances of success are slim. Your mental fortress is your ability to maintain absolute conviction in your vision, despite this constant assault of doubt, discouragement, and well-meaning negativity. It's the psychological strength required to stay focused on your path when everyone around you is suggesting you're heading in the wrong direction. Building this fortress begins with understanding why people doubt you. In most cases, their skepticism says nothing about you and everything about them. When someone tells you that your goal is unrealistic, they're really saying that it would be unrealistic for them. When someone warns you about the risks, they're projecting their own fear of failure onto your situation. When someone questions your capabilities, they're revealing the limitations they place on themselves. This understanding is liberating because it allows you to separate their concerns from your reality. You can appreciate their care without adopting their limitations. You can thank them for their input without letting it penetrate your conviction. You can maintain relationships while establishing firm boundaries around protecting your vision from their doubt. During my journey from business failure to success, the doubt from people around me was relentless. Former colleagues suggested I should give up entrepreneurship and return to corporate work. Extended family members questioned why I wasn't prioritizing immediate income over long-term building. Even close friends implied that I was being stubborn or unrealistic by continuing to pursue my vision after it had already failed once. Every one of these voices chipped away at my confidence. Every conversation planted seeds of doubt. Every well-intentioned concern made me question whether I was being foolish rather than courageous. The turning point came when I realized that none of these people were living the life I wanted to live. None of them had built what I was trying to build. None of them understood the vision I could see so clearly in my mind. That realization allowed me to construct a mental fortress that protected my vision from external interference. I developed specific practices and principles that kept my conviction strong, even when surrounded by doubt. These same principles have helped hundreds of people I've mentored maintain focus while building something significant. The foundation of your mental fortress is clarity of vision. Most people abandon their goals not because they encounter obstacles, but because their vision was never clear enough to withstand questioning. They have vague desires rather than specific visions, wishes rather than commitments, hopes rather than certainties. When challenged, this weak foundation crumbles immediately. Your vision must be so clear, so detailed, and so compelling that you could describe it in vivid detail to someone else. You need to know exactly what you're building, why it matters, and what success will look and feel like when you achieve it. This clarity creates an internal reference point that's stronger than any external doubt. I spent weeks crafting a detailed vision for my rebuilt business before taking any action. I wrote pages describing exactly what the company would look like, who it would serve, how it would operate, and what success would mean. I created this vision in such detail that I could close my eyes and walk through a day in this future reality. That clarity became an anchor that kept me steady through every storm of doubt. The second component of your mental fortress is evidence-based confidence. This means building a catalog of proof that demonstrates your capability to others and, more importantly, to yourself. Every small win becomes evidence. Every obstacle you overcome becomes proof. Every skill you develop becomes confirmation that you can do hard things and achieve challenging goals. Derek built this evidence through micro-wins during his 6 months of secret building. Every feature he completed, every user he acquired, every problem he solved became proof that his vision was viable and his capabilities were real. When doubt from others threatened to penetrate his conviction, he could point to concrete evidence of progress that was more compelling than their abstract concerns. The third component is selective input. Your mental fortress requires you to be extremely intentional about whose voices you allow into your head. This doesn't mean becoming isolated or refusing all feedback. It means distinguishing between input from people who have actually achieved what you're pursuing and opinions from people who haven't. I developed a simple rule. I only accept strategic advice from people who have achieved results I want to achieve. If someone hasn't built a successful business, their advice about my business carries no weight. If someone hasn't maintained a strong marriage, their opinions about my relationship decisions are irrelevant. If someone hasn't achieved financial freedom, their warnings about my financial choices are noise, not signal. This might sound harsh, but it's actually liberating and practical. Most of the discouragement you receive comes from people who haven't done what you're attempting. They mean well, but their advice is based on theory, fear, and conditioning rather than actual experience. Filtering out these voices doesn't mean disrespecting these people. It means protecting your vision from contamination by uninformed opinions. The fourth component of your mental fortress is what I call conviction practices, daily rituals that reinforce your vision and strengthen your resolve. These might include reviewing your written vision every morning, visualizing your success in detail, studying people who have achieved similar goals, or journaling about your progress and lessons learned. My daily conviction practice includes 15 minutes each morning reviewing my goals, reading about successful entrepreneurs who overcame similar challenges, and visualizing myself achieving my objectives. This daily reinforcement creates mental momentum that carries me through moments of doubt or discouragement. Building your mental fortress also requires learning to interpret setbacks differently than most people do. When you encounter obstacles, external voices will interpret them as evidence that you should quit. Your mental fortress allows you to interpret these same obstacles as feedback, learning opportunities, and confirmation that you're pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone. Derek's business faced significant challenges during its first year. Features didn't work as planned. Customers churned faster than expected. Competitors launched similar products. Every one of these setbacks prompted renewed doubt from people around him, but Derek had trained himself to view obstacles as information rather than indictments. Each challenge revealed something he needed to learn, adjust, or improve. Perhaps the most powerful aspect of your mental fortress is the ability to wait. Success rarely happens on the timeline we desire, and most people abandon their goals not because they couldn't achieve them, but because they couldn't maintain conviction long enough for results to materialize. Your mental fortress allows you to stay committed during what I call the invisible years, the period when you're doing everything right, but results aren't yet visible to others, or sometimes even to yourself. These are the years when doubt is strongest because you're investing enormous effort with little external validation. Your mental fortress keeps you building when everyone else thinks you're wasting your time. I spent 3 years in the invisible period after rebuilding my business. I was working harder than ever, making smarter decisions, and creating better systems, but external results were modest at best. During this time, the pressure to quit was enormous. But my mental fortress, built on clear vision, evidence of progress, selective input, and daily conviction practices, kept me focused on what I was building rather than distracted by current circumstances. Then, seemingly suddenly, everything changed. The compounding effects of 3 years of focused effort reached a tipping point, and my business exploded with growth. In 12 months, I achieved more than I had in the previous 3 years combined. But this overnight success was only possible because my mental fortress had protected my vision during the years when no one else believed in what I was building. Derek's story had a similar arc. 18 months after launch, his business finally gained traction. Users multiplied, revenue accelerated, and opportunities appeared that would have been unimaginable during the doubting period. The people who had questioned his decision were now congratulating him on his success, unaware that their earlier doubt had been one of the biggest obstacles he had to overcome. Your mental fortress isn't about becoming arrogant or closed to feedback. It's about developing the discernment to separate useful input from destructive noise and the conviction to maintain focus on your vision regardless of external skepticism. It's about remembering that every person who achieved something significant had to maintain belief when others doubted them. In our next chapter, we're going to explore the daily discipline required to transform vision into reality, and why consistency is the secret weapon that separates achievers from dreamers. Chapter 4. The Compound Effect of Daily Discipline. Michael Rodriguez could pinpoint the exact moment his life changed, but nobody else would have noticed it. It wasn't a dramatic event or sudden breakthrough. It was a Thursday morning when he woke up at 5 a.m., exhausted and tempted to skip his workout, and chose to get up anyway. That single decision to honor his commitment when it was inconvenient marked the beginning of a transformation that would reshape everything. 3 years later, Michael had lost 60 pounds, earned 2 professional certifications, doubled his income, and built a business that generated passive revenue while he slept. When people asked how he had transformed so dramatically, they expected some secret strategy or lucky break. The truth was far simpler and less exciting. He had done small, unglamorous things consistently for over 1,000 consecutive days. This is the principle most people miss in their pursuit of success. Transformation doesn't come from dramatic actions or perfect strategies. It comes from boring consistency. It comes from doing the work when you don't feel like it, showing up when nobody's watching, and maintaining standards when cutting corners would be easier. Daily discipline is the multiplier that transforms potential into results. Without it, even the best strategies fail. With it, even mediocre strategies eventually produce extraordinary outcomes. This is why some people with average intelligence, modest resources, and no special advantages ultimately achieve more than brilliant people with every advantage who lack consistency. The mathematics of discipline are elegant and unforgiving. If you improve by just 1% every day for a year, you'll end up 37 times better than when you started. This is the compound effect applied to personal development. But this compounding only works if you show up consistently, because a single day of 1% decline doesn't just erase 1 day of progress, it reverses the compounding momentum you've built. I learned this principle the hard way during my first business attempt. I was incredibly productive when I felt motivated, inspired, or excited about what I was building. I would work 16-hour days, make dramatic progress, and feel like success was inevitable. But then I would hit a rough patch, lose motivation, and let my standards slip. I would skip workouts, abandon my morning routine, and allow distractions to consume my time. This pattern of intensity followed by slacking created a roller coaster that prevented sustained progress. I was constantly starting and stopping, building momentum and then losing it, making progress and then backsliding. I had confused motivation with discipline, not understanding that motivation is what gets you started, but discipline is what keeps you going. When I rebuilt after my failure, I committed to a completely different approach. Instead of relying on motivation or feelings, I created non-negotiable systems that I would follow regardless of how I felt. These systems weren't complex or time-consuming. They were simple, sustainable, and designed around one principle: never miss twice. My core system consisted of 4 daily non-negotiables: work out for at least 30 minutes, work on my highest priority project for at least 90 minutes, read for at least 30 minutes, and review my goals for at least 10 minutes. These might seem modest, but they were deliberately designed to be achievable even on my worst days. The goal wasn't dramatic daily progress. It was building an unbreakable pattern of consistency. This approach completely transformed my results. Within weeks, I had more consistent energy, clearer thinking, and better focus than I had achieved during my previous periods of intense but unsustainable effort. Within months, I had made more real progress than I had made in the previous 2 years of sporadic intensity. The compound effect of daily discipline was creating exponential returns on modest daily investments. The power of daily discipline lies in its psychological effects as much as its practical outcomes. Every time you honor your commitments when it's inconvenient, you send a powerful message to yourself: I can trust myself. I keep promises to myself. I am someone who follows through regardless of circumstances or feelings. This self-trust becomes the foundation for everything else. You become willing to set bigger goals because you trust yourself to pursue them consistently. You become willing to make bold commitments because you know you'll show up to honor them. You become willing to bet on yourself because your track record proves you're a good investment. Michael discovered this truth through his 3-year transformation. The physical changes were dramatic and visible, but the psychological changes were even more profound. He had proven to himself that he could make a decision and follow through on it for 1,000 consecutive days. That proof gave him confidence to tackle challenges that would have seemed impossible before he had developed his discipline foundation. Building daily discipline requires understanding the science of habit formation. Habits are the brain's way of automating recurring behaviors to conserve energy and decision-making capacity. When an action becomes habitual, it requires minimal willpower or motivation to execute. It simply becomes what you do, like brushing your teeth or making coffee in the morning. The key to building powerful habits is reducing friction and increasing consistency during the formation period. Most people fail to establish new habits because they make them too complex, too time-consuming, or too dependent on perfect conditions. They decide to start working out, then create an elaborate 90-minute routine that requires special equipment and perfect timing. When circumstances inevitably prevent this ideal execution, they skip the habit entirely rather than doing a simplified version. The better approach is what I call minimum viable discipline, the smallest version of a habit that still provides value and maintains the pattern. If your goal is to work out daily, your minimum viable discipline might be 10 push-ups. On days when you have time and energy, you can do your full workout, but on challenging days, you do your 10 push-ups and maintain your streak. This approach ensures that you never miss, which is critical during the habit formation period. Missing once makes missing again twice as likely. Missing twice makes missing a third time 4 times as likely. Before you know it, the habit you were building has completely dissolved and you're back to relying on motivation and willpower. I applied minimum viable discipline to every area I wanted to improve. For reading, my minimum was 1 page. For working on my business, my minimum was reviewing my task list and completing 1 meaningful action. For exercise, my minimum was 10 minutes of movement. These minimums were so small that I had no excuse to skip them, even on my most challenging days. The remarkable discovery was that once I started with my minimum, I almost always continued beyond it. The hardest part of any disciplined action is starting. Once you're in motion, continuing becomes much easier than quitting. My 1 page of reading usually turned into 20. My 10 minutes of exercise usually became 30. The minimum was a psychological trick to overcome resistance and initiate momentum. Daily discipline also requires what I call environment design, structuring your physical and social environment to support your commitments rather than undermine them. Your environment is more powerful than your willpower. When your environment supports discipline, maintenance becomes easy. When your environment opposes it, even the strongest discipline eventually breaks down. Michael transformed his environment to support his goals. He removed all junk food from his house so he wouldn't have to rely on willpower to avoid it. He laid out his workout clothes the night before, so getting dressed for exercise was effortless. He deleted social media apps from his phone so he wouldn't be tempted by distraction during his work blocks. These environmental changes removed friction from desired behaviors and added friction to undesired ones. Another critical aspect of daily discipline is tracking. What gets measured gets improved. When you track your consistent execution of key behaviors, you create accountability and visibility that strengthens your commitment. Tracking also provides evidence of progress during periods when external results haven't yet materialized. I created a simple spreadsheet where I marked an X for each day I completed my 4 core disciplines. This visual representation of consistency became incredibly powerful. Seeing an unbroken chain of X's created motivation to maintain the streak. Even on difficult days, I didn't want to break the pattern I had worked so hard to establish. Perhaps the most important insight about daily discipline is that it's not about perfection, it's about persistence. You will have bad days. You will face circumstances that disrupt your routine. You will occasionally miss your commitments, despite your best intentions. The difference between people who build lasting discipline and people who don't isn't that one group never falters, it's that one group gets back on track immediately, while the other uses a single miss as permission to abandon the pattern entirely. This is the never miss twice rule. If you miss a workout, you never miss the next one. If you skip your morning routine, you execute it flawlessly the following day. If you break your diet, you return to clean eating at the very next meal. One miss is a minor deviation. 2 consecutive misses is the beginning of a new pattern. 3 consecutive misses means you've abandoned the discipline entirely. Michael faced numerous situations that disrupted his routine during his 3-year transformation. Business travel interrupted his workout schedule. Family emergencies consumed his mornings. Illness forced him to modify his standards. But he never allowed these disruptions to become excuses for abandoning his commitments. He adapted, adjusted, and returned to his standards as quickly as possible. The final element of daily discipline is understanding that it becomes easier over time, not harder. This might seem counterintuitive, but it's one of the most encouraging truths about building consistency. The first 30 days of any new discipline are the hardest, because you're relying primarily on willpower and conscious decision-making. But as the behavior becomes habitual, it requires less energy to maintain. After 90 days of consistent execution, the discipline feels natural rather than forced. After 180 days, not doing it feels wrong, like skipping a meal or forgetting to lock your door. After a year, the discipline is so deeply wired into your identity that maintaining it requires less effort than abandoning it would. This progressive automation is why people who have maintained discipline for years make it look effortless. They're not superhuman or blessed with extraordinary willpower. They've simply maintained consistency long enough for their desired behaviors to become automatic defaults rather than conscious choices. The compound effect of daily discipline extends beyond the specific habits you're tracking. When you build discipline in one area, that capacity transfers to other areas. The person who develops discipline through fitness finds it easier to build discipline in their career. The person who establishes financial discipline finds it easier to maintain discipline in relationships. Discipline itself is a transferable skill that strengthens with practice. This transferability means that the specific discipline you choose matters less than the fact that you're building the capacity for discipline at all. Start with whatever area feels most accessible or urgent. Prove to yourself that you can maintain consistency, and then apply that same capability to other domains of your life. Your life will be determined not by your intentions, your knowledge, or your desires, but by what you do consistently, day after day after day. Daily discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment, between knowing and doing, between potential and reality. Build this bridge through small, sustainable commitments maintained with relentless consistency, and watch how it transforms everything. In our next chapter, we're going to explore how to eliminate the distractions that steal your focus and prevent you from executing on your discipline, even when you have the best intentions. Chapter 5. Ruthless Elimination of Distraction. Jennifer Park was drowning in opportunity. She had 3 consulting clients, 2 side projects, a podcast she was launching, an online course she was developing, volunteer commitments with 2 nonprofits, and was in talks about partnering on a startup. On paper, Jennifer looked incredibly busy and productive. In reality, she was scattered, stressed, and making marginal progress on everything, while making substantial progress on nothing. When I met Jennifer, she was working 70-hour weeks and feeling further from her goals than when she had worked 40. She couldn't understand how she could be so busy, yet accomplish so little. The answer was simple, but difficult to accept. She was confusing activity with achievement, motion with progress, and opportunities with priorities. Jennifer's story represents one of the most dangerous traps in modern life, the illusion that more is better. More projects, more connections, more activities, more options. We live in a culture that celebrates busyness as a status symbol and equates packed schedules with importance. But the most successful people I've studied have the opposite approach. They ruthlessly eliminate everything that doesn't directly contribute to their core objectives. Distraction isn't just what obviously wastes your time, like social media scrolling or binge-watching television. Those are easy to identify and, theoretically, easy to eliminate. The more dangerous distractions are the good opportunities that prevent you from pursuing great ones, the productive activities that distract from your highest priorities, and the positive relationships that consume energy needed for your most important work. Every yes to something is a no to something else. When you say yes to a coffee meeting that doesn't serve your goals, you're saying no to an hour of focused work on your priority project. When you say yes to a volunteer commitment that doesn't align with your objectives, you're saying no to time with your family or personal development. When you say yes to a good opportunity, you're saying no to the possibility of a great opportunity that might have appeared if you had capacity to pursue it. The mathematics of distraction are brutal. If you allocate your focus across 10 different priorities, you're giving each priority 10% of your capacity. If someone else allocates 100% of their focus to one of those same priorities, they will achieve 10 times your progress in that area. This is why scattered effort, no matter how intense, rarely produces exceptional results. Exceptional results require concentrated focus over sustained periods. I learned this lesson during my business rebuilding phase when I was tempted to pursue multiple income streams simultaneously. I had opportunities in consulting, digital products, speaking, and various partnership arrangements. My instinct was to pursue all of them, diversifying my bets and maximizing my options. But a mentor challenged me with a question that changed my entire approach. If you could only work on one thing for the next 2 years, which single focus would create the most value and opportunity? That question forced me to confront the reality that I was diluting my effectiveness by spreading my effort across multiple priorities. I chose to focus exclusively on building one core business, declining or postponing everything else that didn't directly support that objective. The focus was uncomfortable initially because saying no to opportunities felt like limiting my potential. But within 6 months, my concentrated effort had produced more progress than my previous 2 years of scattered activity. Ruthless elimination of distraction begins with clarity about your actual priorities. Most people operate with vague priorities like build my business, improve my health, or strengthen my relationships. These aren't specific enough to guide daily decisions about where to allocate attention. You need clarity at the level of specific objectives with measurable outcomes and clear timelines. Jennifer and I spent an entire session identifying her singular priority for the next 12 months. Not 3 priorities or 5 priorities, but one objective that would have the greatest impact on her business and life. After considerable deliberation, she chose to focus exclusively on growing her consulting practice to replace her corporate income within a year. This clarity immediately revealed that her podcast launch, course development, and startup partnership conversations were distractions, not opportunities. The resistance to this level of focus is understandable. What if you choose the wrong priority? What if you miss opportunities by being too narrow? What if your singular focus fails and you have nothing else to fall back on? These fears are valid, but they miss a crucial point. Scattered effort guarantees mediocre results across all fronts, while concentrated effort at least gives you a chance at exceptional results in your chosen area. Once you've identified your singular priority, elimination becomes a systematic process of removing everything that doesn't serve it. This includes activities, commitments, projects, and even relationships that consume time and energy without contributing to your core objective. The first category to audit is your time commitments. Pull up your calendar for the past month and categorize every scheduled activity as either essential to your priority, supportive of your priority, neutral, or actively distracting from your priority. Be honest in this assessment. That networking event you attended might have felt productive, but did it actually move you toward your goal? That meeting you agreed to might have been interesting, but did it serve your priority or someone else's? Jennifer discovered that over 60% of her scheduled time was spent on activities that didn't serve her core objective of growing her consulting practice. She was attending networking events out of habit, not strategy. She was taking meetings that felt important but led nowhere. She was saying yes to requests simply because she didn't want to disappoint people or miss potential opportunities. The systematic elimination of these non-essential commitments freed up 25 hours per week that she redirected to client acquisition, service delivery, and building systems that would scale her practice. Within 3 months, her revenue had increased 40%, while her working hours decreased by 15%. She wasn't working less because she had become lazy. She was working less because she had eliminated the busy work that created the illusion of productivity without generating actual results. The second category to audit is your information consumption. In an age of infinite information access, most people are drowning in content that doesn't improve their capabilities or advance their objectives. They consume news that makes them anxious, social media that makes them envious, and entertainment that numbs them without refreshing them. I implemented a radical information diet when I realized that hours of daily news consumption was making me more informed about problems I couldn't influence while remaining ignorant about skills that would advance my goals. I eliminated all news consumption except for a weekly summary, unfollowed all social media accounts that didn't provide direct value, and stopped reading anything that didn't teach me something applicable to my core objectives. This information diet felt restrictive initially, almost like I was disconnecting from the world. But within weeks, I noticed profound changes. My anxiety decreased because I wasn't constantly consuming other people's problems and crises. My focus improved because I wasn't switching contexts dozens of times per day. My knowledge deepened because I was reading fewer things, but engaging with them more thoroughly. The third category to audit is your relationships. This is the most difficult aspect of distraction elimination because we're taught that maintaining relationships is inherently valuable. But not all relationships are created equal, and maintaining relationships that drain your energy prevents you from fully showing up in relationships that matter. Some relationships energize you, challenge you to grow, and leave you feeling more capable after interactions. Other relationships drain you, reinforce limiting beliefs, and leave you feeling depleted. Some relationships are neutral, pleasant, but not particularly impactful in either direction. You need to be honest about which category each relationship falls into and adjust your investment accordingly. This doesn't mean abandoning people or being cruel. It means being strategic about where you invest your limited relationship energy. The person who tries to maintain equal investment in 50 relationships will have shallow connections with all of them. The person who focuses on maintaining deep connections with 5 key relationships will have profound impact and support in both directions. Jennifer made difficult decisions about her relationship investments. She reduced her involvement in volunteer organizations where she had formed friendships but which didn't align with her current priorities. She stopped attending social events where she felt obligated to appear, but which left her feeling depleted. She had honest conversations with friends about her need to focus intensively on her business for a defined period, offering to reconnect once she had achieved her goal. Some relationships fell away naturally when she stopped maintaining them, which revealed they had been one-sided dynamics sustained by her effort alone. But the relationships that truly mattered not only survived her honesty, but actually strengthened because people respected her clarity and commitment. The fourth category to audit is your physical environment. Your surroundings either support focused work or invite distraction. The person trying to concentrate in a cluttered space full of unfinished projects, stacked papers, and random objects is fighting their environment every moment. The person who works in a clean, organized space designed specifically for focus has environmental support for their objectives. I redesigned my workspace to eliminate all distractions and support deep focus. My desk contains only what's needed for my current task. My phone charges in another room during work sessions. I have no decorations or objects that might pull my attention away from my work. This might sound extreme, but it creates an environment where focus is the path of least resistance, rather than a constant battle against distraction. Perhaps the most challenging aspect of ruthless distraction elimination is maintaining boundaries after you've established them. Once people know you're saying no to commitments, they'll test those boundaries. Once you've eliminated certain activities, you'll feel tempted to reintroduce them. Once you've created focus, life will present constant opportunities to fragment it again. This is where the mental fortress from Chapter 3 becomes essential. You need conviction strong enough to maintain your boundaries despite pressure, guilt, or fear of missing out. You need to remember that every distraction you allow back in comes at the cost of progress on your actual priorities. Jennifer faced constant pressure to relax her boundaries once she had established them. Former clients wanted her to take on projects outside her focus area. Colleagues invited her to join new initiatives. Friends expressed disappointment about her reduced availability. Each request felt reasonable in isolation, but accepting any of them would have fragmented the focus that was producing her results. She developed a simple response that honored the request while maintaining her boundaries. I appreciate you thinking of me, but I'm completely focused on growing my practice this year and need to decline anything that doesn't directly serve that goal. I'll reach out when my situation changes. This honest, clear response ended most conversations respectfully and prevented the back-and-forth negotiation that often weakens boundaries. The ultimate goal of ruthless distraction elimination isn't to become a hermit or robot focused exclusively on productivity. It's to create space for what actually matters by removing what doesn't. It's to ensure that your time, energy, and attention are invested in activities and relationships that advance your priorities rather than dissipated across countless directions that lead nowhere. When Jennifer achieved her goal of replacing her corporate income through consulting, she had done so in 8 months rather than 12. The concentrated focus enabled by eliminating distractions had accelerated her progress by 50%. More importantly, she had developed the capability to identify and eliminate distractions quickly, which would serve her for the rest of her career. Your capacity for focus and execution is your most valuable resource in a world designed to fragment your attention. Protecting this resource through ruthless elimination of distraction isn't optional if you're serious about achieving something significant. It's the difference between scattered effort that produces modest results and concentrated effort that produces exceptional outcomes. In our next chapter, we're going to explore the uncomfortable truth about taking complete ownership of your life and why blaming circumstances or other people guarantees you'll remain stuck. Chapter 6. The Liberation of Total Ownership. Robert Chen sat across from me, explaining in detail why his business had failed, why his marriage had deteriorated, and why his career had stagnated. He had compelling explanations for each failure. His business partner had mismanaged finances, the economy had turned at the worst possible time, his wife didn't support his ambitions, his employer didn't recognize his contributions, and his parents hadn't prepared him adequately for adult challenges. Every explanation was plausible. Many were even partially true. But every explanation had one thing in common. Robert was the victim, and external forces were responsible for his circumstances. After 45 minutes of listening to his narrative, I asked a single question that changed the entire conversation. If you're right about all of this, and your problems are caused by other people and circumstances beyond your control, what can you do to change your situation? Robert sat in silence, confronting the logical conclusion of his own narrative. If other people and external circumstances were responsible for his problems, then he was powerless to solve them. He could only wait and hope that other people would change their behavior, that circumstances would improve, and that life would somehow become fairer. His narrative, while providing emotional comfort by removing blame from himself, had trapped him in complete powerlessness. This is the hidden cost of the victim mentality. It preserves your ego at the expense of your power. Every time you explain your circumstances by pointing to external factors, you're surrendering control over your life. You're declaring that you're not the primary driver of your own outcomes, that you're subject to forces beyond your influence, and that your future depends on variables you can't control. The alternative is uncomfortable, but liberating, taking total ownership of your life, your choices, and your results. Total ownership means accepting that you are responsible for where you are right now, regardless of what other people have done or what circumstances you've faced. It means acknowledging that while you can't control what happens to you, you can control how you respond and what you do next. This principle isn't about fairness or justice. Life is often unfair. People do wrong you. Circumstances beyond your control do impact your opportunities. But focusing on these truths keeps you trapped in powerlessness, waiting for the world to become fair before you can move forward. Total ownership means deciding that you're responsible for improving your situation regardless of how you got there. I learned this principle during my darkest period after my business failure. I had constructed an elaborate narrative about why the failure wasn't entirely my fault. My partner hadn't performed as promised. Key clients had left for reasons beyond my control. Market conditions had shifted unexpectedly. All of these factors were real and had contributed to the outcome. But as long as I focused on them, I remained stuck in bitterness and powerlessness. The turning point came when I stopped asking, "Whose fault is this?" and started asking, "What can I control from this point forward?" This shift immediately revealed Dozens of decisions I could make, actions I could take, and changes I could implement that didn't depend on anyone else changing their behavior or circumstances becoming more favorable. I realized that even if my partner had failed to perform, I had chosen that partner and structured the partnership poorly. Even if clients left for reasons beyond my control, I had built a business model too dependent on too few clients. Even if market conditions shifted, I hadn't anticipated that possibility or built resilience into my systems. Every external factor that had contributed to my failure was connected to earlier decisions or oversights I had made. This realization was painful, but empowering. If my decisions had contributed to my failure, then better decisions could contribute to my success. I wasn't trapped by circumstances, I was trapped by the quality of my thinking, planning, and execution. Improving those factors was completely within my control. Total ownership operates on 3 levels: ownership of circumstances, ownership of responses, and ownership of future outcomes. Most people are willing to accept 1 or 2 of these levels, but resist all 3. They might accept ownership of their responses while insisting their circumstances aren't their fault. Or they might accept ownership of future outcomes while blaming past responses on emotional state or lack of knowledge. Total ownership requires accepting all 3 levels simultaneously. You own your current circumstances, even if you didn't directly cause them, and even if other people contributed to creating them. You own your responses to everything that happens, regardless of your emotional state or the reasonableness of those responses. And you own all future outcomes that result from your current and future choices. This complete ownership might sound like self-blame or guilt, but it's actually the opposite. Blame and guilt keep you focused on the past and on evaluation of your worth. Ownership keeps you focused on the present and future and on what you can control from this moment forward. Ownership isn't about deserving your circumstances, it's about accepting responsibility for changing them. Robert struggled with this concept initially. He felt that accepting ownership of his circumstances meant admitting he was a failure or acknowledging that the people who had wronged him deserved to escape blame. But ownership isn't about determining fault for the past, it's about claiming power over the future. When Robert finally accepted total ownership, his entire approach changed. Instead of explaining why his business partner had caused the failure, he analyzed what he could have done differently in partner selection, agreement structure, and oversight. Instead of complaining that his wife didn't support his ambitions, he examined how he had communicated those ambitions and whether he had been equally supportive of her goals. Instead of resenting his employer for not recognizing his contributions, he evaluated whether he had clearly demonstrated value in ways his employer cared about. This ownership-based analysis revealed a pattern Robert had been blind to while focused on external blame. He consistently avoided difficult conversations, failed to set clear expectations, and hoped that other people would intuitively understand his needs and priorities. These patterns had contributed to every major disappointment he had experienced, yet he had never identified them because he was focused on what others had done wrong rather than what he could do differently. Taking total ownership also requires examining the hidden benefits you might be receiving from maintaining victim status. This is uncomfortable to acknowledge, but victim mentality often provides psychological benefits that make it difficult to abandon. Victims receive sympathy and attention. Victims aren't expected to take risks or push themselves beyond their comfort zones. Victims have ready-made explanations for why they haven't achieved their goals. When I examined my own victim narrative about my business failure, I realized it was protecting me from several uncomfortable truths. It allowed me to maintain my self-image as a capable entrepreneur who had been unlucky rather than someone who had made fundamental mistakes in strategy and execution. It gave me an excuse to avoid the risk of trying again. It provided a story I could tell that generated sympathy rather than questions about what I had learned from the experience. Letting go of this narrative meant confronting these uncomfortable truths and accepting that I had significant blind spots and capability gaps that needed to be addressed. But it also freed me to learn from my mistakes, develop new capabilities, and approach my next venture with humility and wisdom rather than false confidence. Total ownership extends beyond your professional life to every domain. You own your health outcomes, regardless of genetic predisposition or past habits. You own your relationship quality, regardless of your partner's behavior or communication style. You own your financial situation, regardless of your income level or past financial education. You own your knowledge and capabilities, regardless of your formal education or early life circumstances. This doesn't mean that external factors don't matter or that everyone faces equal challenges. Obviously, someone born into poverty faces different obstacles than someone born into wealth. But within any set of circumstances, there's a range of possible outcomes, and which outcome you achieve is determined primarily by the choices you make and the effort you apply. The most powerful aspect of total ownership is that it transforms you from passive to active, from victim to agent, from someone hoping for better circumstances to someone creating better circumstances. When you own your outcomes completely, you stop waiting for permission, approval, or ideal conditions. You start taking action based on what you can control right now with the resources you currently have. Robert's transformation exemplified this shift from passive to active. Within 3 months of accepting total ownership, he had launched a new business venture with a carefully structured agreement that protected against his previous partner-related issues. He had initiated difficult but necessary conversations with his wife that significantly improved their relationship. He had demonstrated clear value to his employer in ways that led to a promotion he had previously thought impossible. None of Robert's external circumstances had changed. The same economy, same industry conditions, and same challenges existed. But his approach to navigating those circumstances had transformed completely, because he had stopped waiting for them to change and started changing how he operated within them. Perhaps the most profound benefit of total ownership is the self-respect it generates. When you accept complete responsibility for your life, you develop genuine confidence based on evidence of your capability to navigate challenges and create outcomes. This confidence is fundamentally different from the false confidence that comes from external validation or temporary success. It's rooted in the knowledge that regardless of what happens, you can handle it, learn from it, and ultimately benefit from it. Total ownership is uncomfortable, especially initially. It's easier to blame circumstances, other people, or bad luck, than to accept that your current situation is the result of thousands of decisions you've made. But this discomfort is the price of power. You can have comfortable explanations, or you can have control, but you can't have both. In our next chapter, we're going to explore what to do when everything in you wants to quit, when your vision seems impossible, and when continuing forward requires a depth of commitment most people never access. Chapter 7. The Breakthrough Beyond Breaking Points. Sarah Mitchell was on day 847 of building her business when she hit the wall. For more than 2 years, she had worked 60-hour weeks, sacrificed vacations, declined social invitations, and invested every spare dollar into her vision. She had followed all the advice, implemented all the strategies, and maintained unwavering consistency. Yet her business was barely breaking even. Opportunities kept falling through, and success seemed perpetually 6 months away. Sarah sat in her car after another failed pitch meeting and typed out the email that would announce she was shutting down her business. She had the draft ready to send to her small team, her remaining clients, and the people who had supported her journey. Her finger hovered over the send button as she fought back tears of exhaustion and defeat. Then she remembered something her mentor had told her months earlier. The moment you most want to quit is usually the moment right before your breakthrough. Everyone who achieves something significant reaches this point. Winners are simply people who decide to continue for one more day, one more week, one more month after everyone else would have quit. Sarah deleted the email, started her car, and went home to sleep. She didn't make any decisions about quitting or continuing. She simply decided that she wouldn't quit today, that she would revisit the decision tomorrow after rest and perspective. That decision to delay quitting by 24 hours changed everything. 3 weeks later, one of Sarah's earlier pitches circled back with an unexpected yes. That single client opened doors to 3 more. Within 6 months, her business had doubled in revenue. Within a year, she was profitable and scaling. Within 2 years, she had built exactly what she had envisioned during those 847 dark days. When I interviewed Sarah years later about her success, she spoke more about day 807 than about any strategy or tactic she had employed. That moment of choosing to continue, when every rational calculation suggested quitting, had defined her entire journey more than any other single decision. This is perhaps the most critical yet least discussed aspect of achieving significant goals. Everyone reaches breaking points where continuation seems impossible, and quitting seems like the only sane option. The difference between people who achieve their goals and people who don't isn't that one group faces easier challenges. It's that one group finds ways to continue through their breaking points while the other surrenders to them. Breaking points aren't exceptions in the pursuit of ambitious goals. They're inevitable features of the journey. If you're pursuing something significant, you will reach points where you're exhausted, discouraged, and convinced that continuing is futile. You will question whether your goal is worth the sacrifice. You will doubt your capabilities. You will wonder if you're being stubborn rather than persistent. These moments are not signals that you should quit. They're signals that you're in the zone where growth happens, where ordinary people become extraordinary, and where the real test of your commitment begins. Champions aren't forged during the easy periods when everything is working and momentum carries you forward. They're forged in the fire of these breaking point moments when continuation requires accessing reserves of determination most people never discover. I've experienced multiple breaking points in my own journey. The one I remember most vividly occurred about 18 months into rebuilding my business after my initial failure. I had been working relentlessly, seeing modest progress and believing that bigger success was imminent. Then I faced 3 major setbacks in a single week. A key client terminated their contract unexpectedly, a promising partnership fell through, and a technical failure wiped out weeks of work. That week, I seriously considered abandoning entrepreneurship entirely. The logical case for quitting was compelling. I had failed once already. I was struggling to gain traction. My family was sacrificing for uncertain returns, and I could easily find corporate employment that would provide security and stress relief. Quitting wasn't just tempting, it seemed rational. But I had learned something crucial from my earlier failure. The pain of quitting lasts longer than the pain of pushing through. When I had abandoned my first business, the relief had been temporary, lasting only weeks. The regret had been permanent, lasting years. I knew that if I quit during this difficult period, I would spend the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I had persisted just a little longer. That knowledge didn't make the breaking point easier to endure, but it did provide clarity about what choice I could live with long term. I decided that I would rather fail from maximum effort than quit prematurely and spend my life wondering. That decision to keep pushing despite rational arguments for quitting proved to be the turning point. Within 2 months, momentum shifted dramatically, and I was experiencing the growth I had been working toward for months. Understanding how to navigate breaking points requires recognizing several key principles. The first is that breaking points often occur right before breakthroughs. This isn't mystical thinking or wishful optimism. It's a predictable pattern rooted in how systems reach tipping points. You can push a heavy object for extended periods with no visible movement, then suddenly it tips and begins rolling on its own momentum. Your efforts toward significant goals follow this same pattern. You invest enormous effort with modest visible returns, questioning whether anything is working. Then, often suddenly, the accumulated effort reaches a tipping point, and results multiply rapidly. The person who quits during the pushing phase, convinced their efforts are futile, never experiences the rolling phase where their earlier effort pays exponential dividends. The second principle is that breaking points test your commitment level, not your goal's viability. When you reach a breaking point, your mind will generate compelling arguments about why your goal isn't achievable, why your strategy is flawed, or why you should pursue something easier. Most of these arguments are rationalizations designed to protect you from discomfort, not accurate assessments of reality. The way to distinguish between legitimate strategic concerns and psychological resistance disguised as rational analysis is to examine whether the arguments are new or simply amplified by your emotional state. If the concerns about your goal's viability are the same ones you already knew about and had accepted when you started, they're probably emotional reactions to difficulty rather than new information requiring strategic changes. The third principle is that your capacity to endure discomfort expands every time you push through a breaking point. Each time you face the desire to quit and choose to continue, you build psychological resilience that makes future breaking points more manageable. The first breaking point feels almost insurmountable. The fifth breaking point, while still difficult, is something you know you can navigate because you've done it before. This expanding capacity for discomfort is one of the hidden benefits of pursuing ambitious goals. You're not just working toward external achievement, you're building internal capability to handle challenge, uncertainty, and delayed gratification. These capabilities transfer to every area of your life and become perhaps more valuable than any specific goal you achieve. When Sarah faced her day 807 crisis, she employed several specific strategies that enabled her to continue when quitting seemed inevitable. The first was time-boxing her quitting decision. Instead of making the decision in the heat of emotional turmoil, she decided she would revisit it after 24 hours, then 48 hours, then a week. This approach prevented impulsive decisions driven by temporary discouragement while allowing for genuine strategic reassessment once emotions had settled. The second strategy was reducing scope without abandoning direction. Sarah realized she couldn't maintain her current pace indefinitely, but she also didn't want to quit entirely. She restructured her business to reduce immediate pressure while maintaining forward momentum, cutting some services, simplifying operations, and giving herself permission to grow more slowly if necessary. The third strategy was reconnecting with her original motivation. Sarah revisited journal entries from when she had first started her business, reminding herself of the vision that had inspired her initial commitment. This reconnection helped her see beyond current difficulties to the larger purpose that made the struggle worthwhile. Perhaps the most powerful strategy for navigating breaking points is what I call next step focus. When you're in the depth of discouragement, thinking about how far you still have to go is overwhelming and paralyzing. But you can almost always identify one next step you can take, one action that moves you slightly forward regardless of your emotional state. For Sarah, next step focus meant not thinking about building a thriving business, just about completing the one client project in front of her. Not worrying about next month's revenue, just about making one sales call today. Not concerning herself with whether she would ultimately succeed, just focusing on doing excellent work for the next hour. This narrowed focus makes continuation possible. When broad perspective seems overwhelming, you're not committing to finishing the entire journey, you're just committing to taking one more step. Then, after that step, you can decide whether to take one more. This approach breaks seemingly impossible commitments into a series of manageable decisions. I also teach people to identify their quit signals, the early warning signs that they're approaching a breaking point, so they can implement support strategies before reaching crisis. These signals might include changes in sleep patterns, increased irritability, loss of enthusiasm for work that usually excites them, or finding themselves dwelling on reasons to quit. When you notice these signals early, you can implement interventions before reaching full crisis mode. This might mean taking a short break to recharge, reaching out to mentors or supporters for perspective, revisiting your goals and motivations, or making temporary adjustments to reduce pressure while maintaining direction. The ultimate truth about breaking points is that they're part of the price of admission for significant achievement. If your goals don't push you to points where quitting seems rational, they're probably not ambitious enough to produce transformative results. The capacity to continue through these points is what separates people who achieve extraordinary things from people with comparable talent, resources, and opportunities who achieve ordinary results. Nobody who has achieved something significant got there without facing multiple moments where quitting seemed like the only reasonable option. The difference is that they found ways to continue for one more day, one more week, one more month, until they reached the breakthrough that had been building beneath the surface all along. In our final chapter, we're going to integrate everything you've learned into a comprehensive action plan that will enable you to start applying these principles immediately and building the life where nobody needs to save you because you've become your own rescue. Chapter 8. Your Independence Declaration. Marcus Williams had finally done it. After 3 years of focused effort, eliminated distractions, and maintained discipline through multiple breaking points, he had built a business that generated more income than his previous corporate salary while working half the hours. He had transformed his health, strengthened his marriage, and created financial security his younger self would have thought impossible. But what struck Marcus most profoundly wasn't the external achievements, it was the internal shift that had occurred along the way. He no longer looked outside himself for validation, direction, or rescue. He had become someone who created opportunities rather than waiting for them, who solved problems rather than hoping they would resolve themselves, and who bet on his own capabilities rather than waiting for circumstances to improve. Marcus had declared independence from the need for external salvation, and that declaration had changed everything about how he moved through the world. This is the ultimate goal of everything we've explored in this book, declaring independence from the rescue that never comes and becoming your own source of strength, direction, and opportunity. This declaration isn't made once and forgotten. It's a daily recommitment, a moment-by-moment choice to take ownership, maintain focus, and keep pushing forward regardless of external circumstances. Your independence declaration consists of 8 core commitments that will serve as your foundation for everything you build from this point forward. These aren't abstract principles to admire. They're specific standards you will hold yourself to, even when doing so is uncomfortable, inconvenient, or unpopular. Commitment 1. I accept that nobody is coming to save me. This is the foundation of everything else. You will stop waiting for perfect circumstances, ideal opportunities, or someone to recognize your potential and hand you success. You understand that you are alone with your choices and your effort, and that this solitude is empowering rather than limiting. You are responsible for your own rescue, and you have everything required to create the life you want. Commitment 2. I focus on building myself first, knowing this is strategy, not selfishness. You commit to prioritizing your own development, capabilities, and foundation before dispersing your energy into other people's agendas. You understand that you cannot give what you don't have, and that becoming strong is the prerequisite for genuinely helping others. You will protect your development time and energy as sacred, refusing to sacrifice your growth for temporary approval or to avoid uncomfortable conversations. Commitment 3. I protect my vision from doubt and maintain my mental fortress. You will guard your mind and attention carefully, filtering input to ensure you're only receiving guidance from people who have achieved what you're pursuing. You will build daily practices that reinforce your conviction and remind you of your vision. You will expect doubt from others and from yourself, but you will not allow that doubt to penetrate your commitment or derail your focus. Commitment 4. I show up with discipline, regardless of how I feel. You understand that motivation is temporary, but discipline is sustainable. You will create minimum viable standards for your core behaviors and honor those standards regardless of circumstances, emotions, or convenience. You will never miss twice, and you will track your consistency to maintain accountability. You recognize that daily discipline compounds into extraordinary results over time. Commitment 5. I ruthlessly eliminate distractions that fragment my focus. You will identify your singular priority and systematically remove everything that doesn't serve it. You will say no to good opportunities that prevent great ones, decline invitations that don't align with your goals, and set boundaries that protect your time and energy. You understand that concentration is your competitive advantage and that scattered effort produces scattered results. Commitment 6. I take total ownership of my life, results, and future. You will stop blaming circumstances, other people, or past experiences for your current situation. You will accept complete responsibility for where you are and where you're going, knowing that ownership is the prerequisite for power. You will ask, what can I control, instead of whose fault is this? And you will focus exclusively on variables within your influence. Commitment 7. I continue forward, especially when I want to quit. You understand that breaking points are part of every significant achievement, and that the moment you most want to quit is often right before your breakthrough. You will develop strategies for navigating these moments, including time-boxing quitting decisions, reducing scope without abandoning direction, and maintaining next-step focus. You will measure yourself not by never wanting to quit, but by continuing despite that desire. Commitment 8. I become my own source of validation, direction, and strength. You will stop looking outside yourself for approval, permission, or confirmation that you're on the right path. You will develop internal standards based on your values and vision, rather than external standards based on other people's expectations. You will trust your own judgment, learn from your mistakes, and build confidence through evidence of your capability, rather than through others' opinions. These 8 commitments form your independence declaration. But declarations alone change nothing. The transformation occurs through implementation, through the daily choice to honor these commitments even when doing so is difficult, especially when doing so is difficult. Your 90-day independence plan. To transform these commitments from inspiring ideas into lived reality, you need a structured implementation plan. Here's your roadmap for the next 90 days, designed to build your independence systematically while producing measurable progress toward your goals. Days 1 to 30. Foundation building. Your first month focuses on establishing the basic infrastructure that will support everything else. Begin by identifying your singular priority for the next year. This should be specific, measurable, and significant enough that achieving it would fundamentally change your circumstances or capabilities. Write this priority in detail, describing not just what you want to achieve, but why it matters and what success will look and feel like. Next, establish your core daily disciplines. Choose 3 to 5 behaviors that, if performed consistently, would guarantee progress toward your priority. These might include focused work blocks on your highest value activity, physical exercise, skill development time, and strategic planning or reflection periods. Define your minimum viable version of each discipline so you can maintain your streak even on challenging days. Create your tracking system. This can be as simple as a spreadsheet, where you mark whether you completed each discipline each day, or as sophisticated as a dedicated app. The key is visibility and accountability. You need to see your consistency or lack thereof clearly so you can course correct quickly. Audit your current commitments and begin the elimination process. List everything you're currently involved in and categorize each as essential to your priority, supportive, neutral, or distracting. Begin declining or exiting the distracting commitments immediately, even if doing so creates short-term discomfort or disappoints people. Implement your information diet. Identify all sources of information consumption and evaluate whether each source makes you stronger or weaker, more focused or more scattered. Eliminate or dramatically reduce consumption of news, social media, and entertainment that doesn't refresh you or teach you something valuable. By the end of month 1, you should have clarity on your singular priority. Establish daily disciplines with at least 80% consistency. Begun eliminating major distractions and significantly reduced information noise. You won't see dramatic external results yet, but you're building the foundation that will support all future growth. Days 31 to 60. Momentum building. Month 2 focuses on deepening your practices and beginning to produce measurable results. Your daily disciplines should now feel more automatic, requiring less willpower to initiate. If they still feel like a constant battle, your standards might be too high or you haven't adequately reduced friction. Adjust as needed to ensure sustainability. Begin working on your mental fortress by identifying whose voices you're allowing into your head. Create 2 lists: people whose advice and input you will actively seek because they've achieved what you're pursuing, and people whose opinions you will politely acknowledge but not allow to influence your decisions. This distinction isn't about superiority, it's about relevance and protecting your vision from contamination by uninformed doubt.
Implement weekly reviews, where you assess your progress, identify what's working and what isn't, and make strategic adjustments. This regular reflection prevents you from continuing ineffective approaches for too long while ensuring you maintain perspective on your overall trajectory rather than getting lost in daily details.
Start building evidence of your capability through small wins. These might be completing a challenging project, learning a new skill, having a difficult conversation, or taking action you've been avoiding. Document these wins in a success journal that you can reference during breaking point moments when your confidence wavers. Deepen your distraction elimination by auditing your relationships and environment. Identify which relationships energize you and which drain you. Then adjust your investment accordingly. Redesign your physical workspace to support focused work, rather than invite distraction. These changes might feel radical, but they create the conditions where your best work becomes possible. By the end of month 2, you should have solid consistency with your daily disciplines, measurable progress on your priority objective, a strengthened mental fortress that protects your vision, and significantly increased focus resulting from your elimination efforts. External results should be starting to appear, though they might still be modest compared to your ultimate goal. Days 61 through 90. Acceleration and integration. Month 3 focuses on accelerating your progress and integrating your new behaviors so deeply that they become your new normal. By now, your daily disciplines should feel like habits rather than choices, requiring minimal conscious effort to maintain. If you're still struggling with consistency, return to foundation-building principles and simplify until sustainability is achieved. Push yourself harder during this month. Take bigger risks aligned with your priority. Have more difficult conversations. Pursue opportunities you would have avoided before. Say no to more commitments that don't serve your goal. The foundation you've built over the past 60 days should now be strong enough to support increased intensity and ambition. Face a breaking point intentionally. Identify something that intimidates you, that you've been avoiding, or that feels just beyond your current capability, and tackle it head-on. This deliberate discomfort builds your capacity for handling future breaking points that arise naturally. You're training yourself to continue when quitting seems rational, building the psychological resilience that separates people who achieve significant goals from those who don't. Strengthen your ownership mindset by conducting a comprehensive life audit. Examine every area where you're experiencing suboptimal results and identify what you could do differently rather than what you wish others would do or what you hope will change externally. This audit reveals blind spots and patterns that might be limiting your progress across multiple domains. Begin sharing your journey selectively. Find 1 or 2 people who are also pursuing significant goals and create accountability partnerships where you regularly share progress, challenges, and lessons learned. This isn't about seeking rescue or validation. It's about accessing perspective and support from people who understand the journey because they're on similar paths. By the end of 90 days, you should have transformed your daily reality substantially. Your behaviors should be markedly different from 3 months earlier. You should have made measurable progress toward your singular priority. Most importantly, you should feel fundamentally different internally, more confident in your capability, more resilient in the face of challenges, and more convinced that your future depends on you rather than on external circumstances. Beyond 90 days, sustaining your independence. The 90-day plan creates momentum and establishes new patterns, but lasting independence requires ongoing commitment and evolution. After completing your initial 90 days, reassess your singular priority. Have you achieved it? If so, what's your next focus? If not, do you need to maintain current direction or make strategic adjustments based on what you've learned? Continue your daily disciplines indefinitely. These practices are maintenance behaviors that keep you strong, focused, and capable regardless of external circumstances. The person who abandons their disciplines once they achieve initial success inevitably slides back toward old patterns and must rebuild what was lost. Regularly update your mental fortress as you grow. New challenges will test your conviction in new ways. New people will enter your life with new forms of doubt. Your vision itself will evolve as you achieve goals and set new ones. Your mental fortress must adapt to protect your evolving vision while incorporating lessons from experience. Keep eliminating distractions aggressively. As you achieve success, new opportunities and requests will multiply. Most will be distractions disguised as opportunities. Maintain your focus by continuing to say no to anything that doesn't directly serve your current priority, regardless of how attractive the opportunity might seem. Deepen your ownership mindset by examining areas where you might be allowing victim thinking to creep back in. This is subtle and ongoing work because the temptation to blame external factors for problems is deeply ingrained. Regular self-reflection and honest assessment prevent victim thinking from re-establishing itself. Perhaps most importantly, pay your transformation forward by helping others who are earlier in their journey, not by rescuing them or doing their work for them, but by sharing what you've learned and holding them accountable to their own commitments. This teaching deepens your own understanding while contributing to a community of people who have rejected the rescue mentality in favor of self-reliance. Your final challenge. I want to end this book with a challenge that will reveal whether you're truly ready to declare independence or whether you're still waiting for someone else to save you. This challenge is simple but difficult. Make a public commitment to your singular priority and establish accountability that makes it harder to quit than to continue. This might mean telling your closest friends and family exactly what you're pursuing and asking them to check in on your progress monthly. It might mean finding an accountability partner who is also pursuing a significant goal and committing to weekly check-ins where you each report on your consistency and progress. It might mean sharing your journey publicly through a blog, social media, or video diary that creates external accountability. The specific mechanism matters less than the commitment itself. You're declaring to yourself and others that you're betting on yourself, that you're taking full responsibility for your results, and that you're committed to following through regardless of how difficult the journey becomes. This public commitment is uncomfortable precisely because it removes the option of quietly quitting when things get hard. You can't abandon your goal without people noticing. You can't make excuses without them being visible. You can't wait for rescue without it being obvious that's what you're doing. This discomfort is exactly what makes public commitment so powerful. It raises the cost of quitting while providing social support and external accountability that complement your internal discipline. You're not relying on others to save you, but you're using social dynamics to strengthen your commitment to saving yourself. The life that awaits. Marcus Williams, Sarah Mitchell, Jennifer Park, Derek Thompson, Maria Santos, and every other person whose story has illustrated principles in this book share one thing in common. They're all real people I've worked with who declared independence from rescue and built lives that exceeded what they initially thought possible. None of them had special advantages. All of them faced obstacles, setbacks, and breaking points. All of them had moments when quitting seemed rational and continuation seemed foolish. The difference between them and people who remain stuck waiting for rescue isn't talent, luck, or circumstances. It's the decision to take full ownership of their lives and the daily commitment to honor that decision through disciplined action. This is the life that awaits you on the other side of your independence declaration. Not a life free from challenges or difficulties, but a life where you're the primary driver of outcomes rather than a passenger hoping someone else will steer you toward success. A life where obstacles are problems to solve rather than reasons to quit. A life where your future depends on your choices and effort rather than on circumstances beyond your control. You know the truth now. Nobody is coming to save you. The rescue you've been waiting for doesn't exist. The perfect circumstances won't arrive. The lucky break won't materialize. The person who will transform your life and solve your problems is you, and only you. This truth isn't pessimistic or discouraging. It's the most liberating reality you'll ever encounter. Because if nobody is coming to save you, then you don't need to wait any longer. You can start right now with whatever resources you currently have, wherever you are, exactly as you are. Your independence begins today. Take the first step, make the first commitment, honor your first daily discipline, eliminate your first distraction, take ownership of your first result, continue through your first breaking point. Then do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. The life you want is built one disciplined day at a time, one focused hour at a time, one owned decision at a time. It's built by someone who stopped waiting for rescue and became their own salvation. That someone is you. Your journey of independence starts now. Conclusion: the rescue that already arrived. I want to tell you one final story before we part ways. It's about a man who had been waiting his entire life to be rescued. He waited for his parents to give him the perfect upbringing. He waited for teachers to unlock his potential. He waited for his employer to recognize his contributions. He waited for his spouse to complete him. He waited for opportunities to present themselves. He waited for luck to finally swing his way. Decades passed. The rescue never came. His potential remained dormant. His dreams remained wishes. His life remained a fraction of what it could have been. He grew bitter, resentful, and convinced that the world had failed him. Then one day, in his final years, he realized something that changed how he saw his entire life. The rescue had been there all along. It had been inside him, waiting for him to activate it through his choices, his effort, and his commitment. The person capable of saving him had been present every single day of his life, but he had been looking in the wrong direction. That man was my father. And watching him arrive at this realization too late to apply it, became the driving force behind everything I've spent my career studying, teaching, and writing about. I don't want anyone to reach the end of their life and realize they had the power all along, but never used it because they were waiting for someone else to give them permission, validation, or opportunity. You have that power now. Everything you've read in this book has prepared you to activate it. You understand that nobody is coming to save you, and that this truth is liberating rather than limiting. You know that focusing on yourself first is strategic rather than selfish. You've learned to build a mental fortress that protects your vision from doubt. You understand the compound effect of daily discipline. You know how to eliminate distractions ruthlessly. You've embraced total ownership of your life and results. You've learned how to push through breaking points. And you've seen the template for declaring independence and building a life where you're your own rescue. The principles that will guide you forward. Let me distill everything we've covered into the core principles that will guide you from this point forward. Return to these principles whenever you feel lost, discouraged, or tempted to wait for external salvation. instead of creating your own. Principle 1. Self-reliance is the foundation of everything. Every capability you build, every skill you develop, every discipline you master, and every resource you create compounds your capacity to handle whatever life presents. The strongest foundation you can build is self-reliance, because it's the only foundation that can never be taken from you by circumstances, other people, or market conditions. Principle 2. Focus creates force. Scattered effort across many directions produces scattered results. Concentrated effort on singular priorities produces exponential returns. Your attention and energy are finite resources. Guard them jealously and invest them strategically in what matters most. Principle 3. Consistency beats intensity. 1 hour of focused work daily for a year produces more results than occasional bursts of 16-hour intensity separated by periods of inactivity. Sustainable progress requires sustainable practices. Build routines you can maintain indefinitely, rather than heroic efforts you can only sustain temporarily. Principle 4. Ownership equals power. Every time you explain your circumstances by pointing to external factors, you surrender control. Every time you accept responsibility for your situation and your response to it, you reclaim power. You cannot control what happens to you, but you have complete control over what you do next. Principle 5. Breaking points precede breakthroughs. The moment you most want to quit is often the moment right before your accumulated effort reaches a tipping point and produces exponential results. Everyone who achieves something significant faces multiple breaking points. The difference is that some people continue through them while others surrender to them. Principle 6. Your future depends on your daily choices. What you do today matters more than what you did yesterday or what you plan to do tomorrow. Your life is shaped by the accumulation of thousands of small decisions made consistently over time. Choose wisely today, then make the same wise choice again tomorrow. Your next steps, action plan. You've finished reading. Now the real work begins. Here's exactly what you need to do in the next 7 days to transform everything you've learned from interesting ideas into lived reality. Day 1. Define your singular priority. Write down the one goal that, if achieved in the next 12 months, would most dramatically improve your life or business. Be specific. Define what success looks like in concrete, measurable terms. Describe why this goal matters to you personally. This becomes your North Star for all decisions moving forward. Day 2. Establish your core disciplines. Identify 3 to 5 daily behaviors that, if performed consistently, would guarantee progress toward your singular priority. For each behavior, define both your ideal execution and your minimum viable version that you can maintain even on difficult days. Commit to tracking these disciplines daily for the next 90 days. Day 3. Audit and eliminate. Review your calendar, commitments, and activities from the past month. Identify everything that doesn't directly serve your singular priority. Begin the process of declining, exiting, or delegating these commitments. Have the difficult conversations required to establish boundaries that protect your focus. Day 4. Build your mental fortress. Write out your detailed vision for what success looks like. Identify 3 people whose advice you will actively seek because they've achieved what you're pursuing. Create a list of conviction practices you'll use daily to reinforce your commitment. Start a success journal where you'll document evidence of your progress. Day 5. Implement your information diet. Eliminate or dramatically reduce consumption of news, social media, and entertainment that doesn't make you stronger, smarter, or more capable. Replace reactive information consumption with proactive learning that develops skills relevant to your priority. Protect your attention like the precious resource it is. Day 6. Take total ownership. Write out every area of your life where you're experiencing suboptimal results. For each area, identify what you've been blaming on external factors. Then, for each external factor, identify what you could do or could have done differently. This exercise reveals your actual power and the specific changes that will improve your circumstances. Day 7. Make your public commitment. Tell at least 3 people about your singular priority and ask them to hold you accountable with monthly check-ins. Join or create an accountability partnership with someone else pursuing a significant goal. Share your commitment publicly in whatever forum makes sense for you. Make it harder to quit than to continue by creating social accountability. These 7 actions will establish the foundation for everything that follows. They transform you from someone who read an inspiring book into someone who is actively building an independent life, where nobody needs to save you because you've become your own rescue. A personal message. 15 years ago, I was sitting in a parking lot outside a bankruptcy attorney's office, broken and waiting for someone to save me. Today, I run multiple successful businesses, live with financial freedom, maintain deep relationships, and wake up every day excited about what I'm building rather than anxious about what might go wrong. The difference between those 2 versions of me isn't luck, connections, or circumstances. It's the decision to stop waiting for rescue and start creating my own salvation through daily discipline, ruthless focus, total ownership, and relentless persistence through breaking points. That same transformation is available to you, not because you're special or because I have secret strategies I haven't shared, simply because you're willing to do what most people won't. Accept complete responsibility for your life and honor that responsibility through consistent action, regardless of how you feel or what obstacles you face. The journey won't be easy. You will face doubt from others and from yourself. You will encounter obstacles that seem insurmountable. You will reach breaking points where quitting seems like the only sane option. You will question whether your goals are worth the sacrifice and whether you have what it takes to achieve them. In those moments, remember this: thousands of people before you have faced the same doubts, the same obstacles, and the same breaking points. Some surrendered to them and spent the rest of their lives wondering what might have been. Others pushed through them and built lives that exceeded what they initially thought possible. The choice between these 2 outcomes isn't made once, it's made daily, hourly, moment by moment, through the decisions you make, when nobody is watching and nothing is forcing you to do the right thing except your commitment to yourself. Choose yourself. Bet on yourself. Build yourself. Rescue yourself. Nobody is coming to save you. And once you truly accept this truth, you'll realize you don't need them to. You already have everything required to build the life you want. Your independence starts now. Take the first step today. The life you're meant to live is waiting on the other side of your action. Go claim it.